Desert. Midday. Outside the cab, it is 50 degrees Celsius in the shade. But for hundreds of kilometers around, there is no shade at all. Most people imagine a trucker in the heat simply turns on the air conditioning, drinks water, and keeps driving. But that is not how it works in reality. He is driving a 40-ton truck across asphalt so hot it can melt the soles of your shoes. The tires are heating from both sides at once, slowly moving toward the temperature where rubber begins to break down. The diesel reacts differently to heat than to cold, but it can still leave the driver stranded in the middle of a burning plane. And if the air conditioning fails at that moment, the cab turns into an oven within minutes, no escape. Every summer, dozens of drivers cross roads like this, and for some of them, the trip does not end at the unloading dock. Today, we are going to take that journey together, from loading at sunrise to the deepest hours of the night, and you will see that the most dangerous part of this trip is not the heat you imagine. Because when people hear desert and 60 degrees Celsius, they picture a driver covered in sweat, but the real danger is hidden much deeper. What happens to the truck when the road itself is boiling? Why can't the driver simply stop in the shade? Why do many popular internet heat survival tricks actually kill faster than the heat itself? How can 40 degrees Celsius heat trick a driver's brain until he no longer understands that something is wrong? And what does a driver do at the worst possible moment, when the truck stops in the middle of nowhere and the nearest settlement is 100 kilometers away? We will go through it step by step, exactly as the journey unfolds. Let's begin. 6 in the morning. The sun has just risen above the edge of the desert. The air is still soft, around 30 degrees Celsius. It feels like there is plenty of time. But right now, at sunrise, the fate of the entire trip is already being decided. In the desert, driving is not just driving, it is a race against time. Every hour after sunrise, the road gets hotter. By midday, the asphalt will become so hot that you cannot walk on it in normal shoes. That is why the most important kilometers must be covered before the desert reveals its full power. An experienced driver loads at night or at sunrise. Not because it is comfortable, because every cool hour matters, and here is the main rule we will return to throughout this whole video. In the desert, you do not survive through strength, you survive through planning and preparation. Just like drivers in the far north survive minus 40 degrees Celsius not through heroism, but through a system made of many small details. And here is the first of those details. The morning is spent doing something a beginner might think is a waste of time. The driver walks around the truck. He checks every wheel with his hand, he checks the pressure, and sometimes, on purpose, he slightly lowers the tire pressure. Sounds wrong, doesn't it? Usually, people think the more inflated, the better, but in the desert, the physics are different, and hidden inside that physics is the first deadly trap. We will come back to it very soon. Next comes water. Not 1 liter, not 2, dozens of liters. Some of it is for the cooling system. Some of it is for the driver himself, and some of it goes into a special reserve compartment because out here, water will become the most valuable resource on board. And finally, the radio. In the desert, the radio is more important than the navigation system. Communication is the only thread connecting this lonely cab to the rest of the world. When everything is ready, the driver starts moving. The morning still feels cool, but the thermometer has already started climbing, and with it, the hidden trap inside the wheels has started waking up. By 10 in the morning, the air is already above 40 degrees Celsius, but the air is only half the problem. The real danger is under the tires. The asphalt is always hotter than the air. On extreme days, the road reaches temperatures that make even stepping barefoot on it unthinkable. This is where the physics begins, the kind a trucker feels through the rubber. A tire is made of rubber, and rubber hates heat. When its temperature rises above 90 degrees Celsius, the material begins to degrade. The layers inside the tire start losing strength. They can separate, and the tire heats from two directions at the same time. From below, the burning road cooks it. From inside, movement heats it even more. Every rotation creates friction, and friction creates heat. That is why it is easy to believe the myth that desert tires explode because of the sun. But the truth is more complicated. Speed, pressure, load, and the condition of the rubber all matter. And every one of those factors is controlled by the driver. Now the reason for lowering tire pressure in the morning becomes clearer. The driver is choosing the lesser danger. An overinflated tire expands in the heat, pressure rises, and the tire can burst, but a tire that is too underinflated is also dangerous. Its side walls bend more with every rotation. That creates more friction. More friction means more heat. The driver has to find the narrow middle ground where the tire does not burst from internal pressure and does not overheat. From deformation, the heavier the load, the narrower that safe zone becomes. 40 tons crush the rubber so hard that any mistake in pressure is multiplied. There is a third factor too. The condition of the tire itself. An old tire with worn tread releases heat worse than a new one. It cracks sooner. That is why tires are inspected before entering the desert. A small crack in the side wall might survive thousands of kilometers somewhere else, but on a burning road, it becomes a countdown to a blowout. And the most dangerous part is that the tire does not always fail immediately. It may continue for dozens of kilometers after internal damage has already begun. Then it explodes at the worst possible moment. That is why one rule is absolute. In extreme heat, you drive slower, not just for road safety, but to keep the tires from overheating. The faster the truck goes, the more friction builds, the hotter the tires get, and the closer one of them comes to exploding while the truck is moving. On a 40-ton truck, that is not just a flat tire. It is a violent pull on the steering wheel, a shock powerful enough to throw the truck across the road, or even fold the trailer. That is why an experienced driver does not rush. He sacrifices speed so the tires have time to cool, and every 100 kilometers he stops and checks the wheels by hand. Sometimes the hand is more reliable than any instrument. At one of those stops close to midday, he places his palm on the tire and he understands immediately. It is too hot. The city is still far away, and the desert is only beginning to show what it can do, because noon is coming. And with it comes a question that sounds simple only at first. Why can't he just stop and wait until the worst heat passes? 12 noon. The sun is directly overhead. The desert enters its cruelest phase during these hours. The surface of the earth in the hottest places on the planet can reach 70 degrees Celsius. The soles of your shoes can literally begin to soften if you stand still. Plastic heats so much that the edges of a foam left on the sand can deform. Metal parts of the cab become impossible to touch with bare hands. The air coming through an open window hits your face like an industrial hair dryer. Opening the window to cool down only makes things worse. The obvious answer seems simple. Stop. Wait out the heat. Continue in the evening. And this is the misunderstanding that costs drivers their lives. Drivers in the north face the same rule, only in reverse. At minus 40 degrees Celsius, they never shut the engine off. If they do, within 20 minutes the cab becomes as cold as the outside air. The heat escapes constantly, and there is no way to hold it. In the desert, the opposite happens. If the engine is shut off, the cab heats up within the same few minutes, because the only thing keeping it livable disappears, the air conditioning, and the air conditioning only works while the engine is running. So to survive midday inside a usable cab, the engine has to keep running. But then comes the same dilemma drivers have faced for generations in the north. a running engine in extreme heat can overheat. Its cooling system has to release heat into the outside air, but outside, the air already feels like fire. It is a vicious circle. The air conditioning saves the driver, but it loads the engine. If the engine overheats, the air conditioning disappears. That is why so much water was loaded in the morning. Some of it is emergency reserve in case the engine starts boiling, but there is a smarter solution, and it is the mirror image of the northern solution. In the north, drivers use an auxiliary heater so they do not have to run the main engine all night. It is a compact unit about the size of a shoebox that heats the cab by itself and uses far less fuel. In hot climates, the logic is the same, but reversed. A properly prepared vehicle has an independent cooling system, a nighttime air conditioner powered by a separate battery. It keeps the cab livable without turning the big engine. The driver who prepared can wait out the worst heat. The driver who simply hoped to turn everything off and fix problems later makes the same mistake as a northern rookie trying to sleep without heat. But sometimes the driver has no choice. Sometimes the truck stops not because the driver chose to rest, it stops because something broke, and that is what desert drivers fear most. Because a forced stop at midday starts a chain reaction, and at the end of that chain, it is not the truck that suffers first. It is the human being. But before we get there, we need to talk about what destroys drivers even before a breakdown. Their own tricks. When the heat becomes unbearable, a person reaches for anything that seems useful, and just like in northern travel, driver improvisation can create methods more dangerous than the environment itself. In the north, folk wisdom tells people to bring hot stones from a fire into the cab or light a gas stove for warmth. Every year, someone falls asleep beside one of those stoves and never wakes up. In a closed space, carbon monoxide builds up. It has no color, no smell, and it binds to blood hundreds of times more easily than oxygen. In the desert, the enemy is different, but it is just as invisible: dehydration and overheating. And there are just as many myths about them. The first myth: pour cold water on the tires or radiator to cool them down. On red-hot metal and heated rubber, cold water spreads unevenly, and the driver wastes precious water, which is rare in the desert, for an effect that lasts only a minute before it evaporates. The second myth: open all the windows and drive with the breeze. But hot wind does not cool you. It dries you. It speeds up evaporation from the skin. It accelerates dehydration, and it burns. The third myth is the most dangerous: drink when you get thirsty. In serious heat, by the time you feel thirsty, you are already late. An experienced driver drinks on schedule, small amounts, regularly, without waiting for thirst, because when the mouth is already dry and swallowing is difficult, the body has already fallen behind. People who have worked in the hottest places on earth describe it the same way. You drink again and again, but the thirst does not go away. There is another trap too: the eyes. Sunlight reflecting from the sand and road can become so intense that a person feels like he is going blind. Light comes from everywhere. Some people think sunglasses are optional. In the desert, without them, you may simply stop seeing the road clearly. Sunglasses are not a luxury here. They are as necessary as water and radio. The conclusion is the same as in the north. The only reliable method is not last-second heroics. It is a factory-made system and calm preparation in advance. But what if the system fails? What if the very thing the driver depended on breaks? Then comes the moment all the rules were created for. Imagine the worst moment of the route. 2 in the afternoon, the hottest point of the day. The engine suddenly stops. Maybe it overheats. Maybe the fuel pump fails. The air conditioning shuts off. The nearest settlement is 200 kilometers away. From this second on, time is no longer counted in hours. It is counted in minutes. The cab stops being a shelter almost instantly. Without ventilation, The temperature rises so quickly that every minute matters, just like in the north, when an engine fails at -40 degrees Celsius. And here comes the betrayal of heat, the part that must be understood clearly to cool itself. The body sweats. As sweat evaporates, it carries heat away. But the body's moisture is not endless. Without water, sweating stops and the body loses its only way to cool down. Internal temperature begins to rise when it reaches around 40 degrees Celsius. The brain takes the hit. That is what makes this moment so dangerous. The person becomes sleepy, confused, a severe headache appears, the body may start trembling. But the worst part is something else. In that condition, the person no longer evaluates danger clearly. The organ that should sound the alarm is the first one to fail. The driver thinks he is just tired, so he keeps trying to repair the engine under the sun while his attention drifts and his reaction slows. The same thing happens in the cold. A freezing person stops understanding the danger and falls asleep. Heat and cold kill in the same cruel way. They do not just shut down the body, they shut down the ability to understand that it is time to survive. A prepared driver does not act on instinct, he follows an order learned in advance, just like a northern emergency kit. The northern driver carries matches, a sleeping bag, a thermal blanket, and a thermos. His task is to preserve heat. The desert driver's task is the opposite. Do not move more than necessary, do not overheat. The main mistake is to panic and try to fix everything at any cost. That burns energy, it burns water. It makes the body sweat, and in the desert, that sweat evaporates instantly, accelerating dehydration. The correct action is the opposite. Get into the shade of the vehicle or create shade. With a reflective screen, cover the entire body with light fabric, as people do in the hottest deserts, where no skin should be exposed. Ration water sip by sip, save energy for one action. Reach for the radio. In this situation, the most reliable solution is not repair, it is communication. And now the whole logic of the journey becomes clear. Why is the radio more important than the navigator? Why is checking in every 10 minutes not just a formality? Why do vehicles travel in pairs on the hottest days instead of alone? The answer is the same. One person alone in a burning desert is almost doomed. But two people can watch over each other, and this unwritten code, shaped by the mistakes of others, now decides whether the driver lives. Strength does not save him. Luck does not save him. A system of rules saved him, and every rule has a price that someone once paid with their life. These are the same laws that keep northern drivers alive, only translated from the language of cold into the language of heat. Rule 1. On dangerous days, vehicles do not go alone. They travel in pairs and keep constant contact every 10 minutes. If someone does not respond on time, the second driver has a chance to turn back and reach him. For our broken-down driver at the hottest point of the day, those 10 minutes may be the difference between they arrived and they did not find him. Rule 2. Carry more water than seems reasonable. Because in the desert, there is never too much water. The person who runs out of it in the middle of the plain will not walk out on his own. Rule 3. Never leave the planned route. There are no landmarks in the desert. Look in any direction and the dunes appear the same. Your own tracks can be erased by wind within hours. You stop recognizing places you passed only recently, and it is easy to get lost even a few kilometers from the road. Rule 4. The rule that the entire midday section was built around. The most important kilometers are driven not during the day, but during the cooler hours. It is not a coincidence that in some of the hottest deserts on Earth, authorities directly ban people from being there in the middle of summer. The risk is to high. When the second driver reaches the broken-down truck, they do not rush to repair it under the midday sun. They move the driver into shade, give him water, let the heat drop, and only later Closer to evening do they begin repairs, when it is possible to work and stay alive again. Then night approaches and the desert delivers its final strike, wind. During the day, it felt like burning breath. By evening, it grows stronger, a clear warning of a nighttime sandstorm. First comes a distant rumble, like the sound of the sea. Then the sand rises like a wall. Visibility disappears. Headlights vanish into a thick haze. Driving becomes impossible. The only choice is to face the wind and wait for hours until the fury weakens. And even then, the vehicles traveling together keep in contact by radio. Again, the water reserve that seemed excessive in the morning becomes the reason they can wait calmly through unexpected hours. When the storm finally passes and the cool night rises over the desert, the drivers do what they endured the day for. They drive. Desert nights can become so cold that you need warm clothing, and it is during these hours that vehicles cover the greatest distance. The tires no longer overheat, the engines breathe better. The body stops losing water by the liter. By sunrise, when the city lights appear ahead, both drivers understand something. They made it not because they were stronger than the desert. They made it because they knew its rules, and they did not break them. We are used to thinking of a truck as just metal on wheels, and a desert highway as just a line on a map, but this journey proves otherwise. Every tire balances pressure and overheating. Every hour before midday is time won. Every sip of water delays heat stroke, and almost every popular trick against the heat turns out to be a shortcut toward dying faster. The most surprising thing is the same as in the far north. At minus 40 degrees Celsius, the machinery is often weaker than the human. A laser thermometer can give errors in extreme heat. Cameras and phones shut down, rubber falls apart. Metal becomes dangerous to touch. And the human keeps going, not because he is tougher than the machine, but because he can plan, wait, protect resources, and listen to those who survived before him. Heat, like cold, does not forgive mistakes, but physics, preparation, and calculation can turn a deadly trip into normal work. In the burning South and the frozen North, survival follows the same rule, not heroism, a system. And the next time you see a product on a shelf that traveled from far away, remember this: somewhere between the place it was made and the store near your home, there may have been a burning plane, and someone crossed it slowly by the rules with a radio in hand and water behind his back, so that box could reach you. The price of logistics is not only kilometers and liters of fuel. It is human endurance. If you found this hidden world interesting, subscribe to the channel. There are still many stories ahead about people surviving where nature is working against them. Do not miss the next deep dive.